Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. As I mentioned last week, I wanted to do a midsummer deep dive into the transfer portal as it relates to Big Ten basketball. As I had talked about after the season ended, I'm always looking for episode ideas for the summer. I'm always looking for things to talk about, new content, just stuff to kill the time as we wait for football season to get here. And this is something that I got from a lot of people, is to talk about the transfer portal, because frankly, for most people, it's almost impossible to follow on a large scale. There are so many moving parts that how could a normal person follow it? We're going to take a look at that today. We are going to talk about a few things as Purdue goes into summer practices. If you missed last week's episode, we did talk about Cannon Catchings. We did talk about Daniel Jacobson and the U18 team, where he really had a nice run. Go back and check that out if you're looking for content on those topics in your podcast feeds. But let's dive into the portal here. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. You can always send episode ideas there, or to my email, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Probably looking at about 6 or 7 episodes left to record before we get into the countdown to kickoff. So anything you've got, send it on my way. I'm all ears. I'm open to anything. And be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. But it was really fascinating to dive into the portal, the Big Ten basketball transfer portal. A couple of reasons. Number one, I was a little surprised at how little I know about these West Coast schools that are joining the Big Ten. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised because, frankly, I don't watch a ton of Pac-12 basketball. There was a point in my life, aka college, where you're staying up till 2 a.m. all the time and you're watching whatever games are on TV. Those days have come and gone. So it's not like I watch much Pac-12 basketball. I'm not someone who, stays up till 1 a.m. on a Saturday to gamble on the 11 o'clock p.m. Pac-12 network game. So I was a little surprised at how little I knew. Who are these people? I tried to find out a little bit, but I still have a long way to go before we get to November. It was interesting as well to see the disparity in some schools' transfer portal approach. You're dealing with all ends of the spectrum here in the Big Ten. You have some programs that are all in on trying to build competitive Big Ten championship level rosters out of the transfer portal. And you have some schools who really don't want to get involved in the portal at all. There was only one Big Ten program who didn't take a player out of the transfer portal this year. I think you all know who that is. But there were plenty of programs that were very, very quiet in the transfer portal, and there were some that were anything but quiet. In some cases, that was the school's choice. In some cases, the school had no choice. The roster all left. They have to go out and replace them somehow. You can't go all Norman Dale and say my team is on the floor with just 4 players in a college basketball season. So it was really interesting to gather some insights on what's going on across the league here. What I'm going to do, and maybe this will be good podcasting, maybe not. I'm not sure. You'll have to let me know. I'm going to go through all 18 Big Ten schools with a quick 30 to 60 second maximum thought on what they did in the transfer portal. Hopefully that gives you a better feel. We'll see. I don't want to go super deep into all of these teams because how much time do you really want me to spend on Northwestern's transfer portal cycle? But let's get into this here alphabetically. Illinois is going to be a whole new team once again. This is kind of Brad Underwood's MO. And to his credit, it's been successful for him at Illinois. That program is a lot better and a lot more successful than it has been in quite some time. really going back to that 2005 team at the end of the Bill Self, early Bruce Weber years. They lose a ton of guys. You lose some guys to graduation, Terrence Shannon, Marcus Damask, Luke Goody departs, Dane Danger, Sincere Harris, Moretti. They lose a lot. They also bring a lot in. Kylan Boswell is going to be the big name, point guard out of Arizona who's from Champaign. I'm fascinated to see how it works. Illinois had some really good portal cycles in recent years. On the surface, without knowing a ton about some of these guys, I don't know what to expect. I'm really not sure. I know Illinois brought in a nice freshman class as well. That's going to be a really interesting team to monitor. As is always the case with Illinois, if it comes together well, Illinois is going to have a pretty good team. There's always the possibility, though, that it kind of blows up, and then you get into a world of hurt if you're an Illini fan. On the southern half of this state, Indiana was as active as any program nationally in the transfer portal. Indiana's all in on one last run for Mike Woodson. Indiana wants to make this work. It's very evident that from the top down, folks around Bloomington want to make the Mike Woodson experience work. They want Mike Woodson to lead that program to success. So Indiana went out and got two of the better guards in the transfer portal, Cannon Carlisle from Stanford, Miles Rice from Washington State. Picked up a top big guy in the portal, Umar Ballo from Arizona. Added a much-needed shooter in Luke Goody from Illinois. The question is it enough? And what are the expectations down there? Because, I don't really operate in the classic Purdue just dump on Indiana narrative. This should be a pretty good team. This should be an Indiana team that can compete for the Big Ten, that can compete for a solid seed in the NCAA tournament, and make a run to the second weekend. If it doesn't achieve that, I would assume Mike Woodson has shown the doors. It has to come together well. This is a lot, these are a lot of new pieces to merge together, but it should work. I mean, this is a pretty good roster if you're looking at Indiana. Got a 5-star, I believe, recruit in Bryson Tucker. It should be a pretty good Indiana roster. We will see what it looks like, but Indiana certainly looks like an improved roster from last year. Iowa certainly took a big blow losing Tony Perkins to Missouri. Purdue fans really saw him have some good games against Purdue over the years. By no means is Tony Perkins a star, but he's a really good player. He's a really good Big Ten basketball player who has been around forever. That's a big loss. Losing Patrick McCaffrey to Butler was more of a headline that made you do a double take, but Iowa's going to be okay. They get Peyton Sandford back from the NBA draft. He pulled his name out, and that's probably the biggest win. Couple of low to mid-major transfers in. Iowa's going to have to hope on internal growth this year. It's going to hope for a big year from Peyton Sandford, from Price Sandford, from Owen Freeman continuing to develop as a big guy. Iowa probably needs to get back to the NCAA tournament. I can never tell what Iowa fans want from Fran McCaffrey. I don't know how easy of a job that is, but Iowa has not done great the last few years. So that's going to be one to watch. Maryland is going to look brand new. Last year was an odd year because Maryland came in with a ton of veterans. Dante Scott, Hakeem Hart, Jameer Young. It didn't work out. It just didn't. For whatever reason, that team was terrible. It didn't make sense on paper. Granted, they couldn't really shoot, but it should have been a better team than it was, but it didn't work out. A few transfers out, not a huge deal. Bring in some really big-time transfers. Jacoby Gillespie from Belmont is a really good player. I've seen him play in the Missouri Valley. He's a nice piece. That's a good get. Rodney Rice from Virginia Tech should be a nice addition as well. He's one of those DeMatha Catholic guys. That's always a a good get if you're a Maryland fan, but this is a big year for Kevin Willard. This is completely his team now, year 3. Any holdovers from the Turgeon era are gone. That seems like an NCAA tournament or serious conversation situation out in College Park. Michigan, and it's funny because I think we've hit all of the biggest turnover programs early on here. Michigan is the one that undoubtedly needed to do what it did here. It is completely cleaned house. It is a brand new roster. It's going to look nothing like the team that was out there last year. And while, yes, Doug McDaniel was a good player, and he departs to Kansas State, Terrence Williams was an all right player. Terrace Reed was an all right player. Michigan needed to hit the reset button. You don't slide as a program like Michigan did and not adjust anything and just expect Dusty May to walk in and do really well. I'm not in Ann Arbor. I'm not close to it, but it seemed like the culture up there sucked. So Dusty May brings in a whole squad of players. You got the big guy from Florida Atlantic. You got a big guy from Yale. You have Roddy Gale doing the Ohio State to Michigan move. That's an interesting one. I think Michigan should be significantly better, but it always should have been. That roster was way better than it showed under Juwan Howard. This is a team that looks like it could get to the NCAA tournament in year 1 under Dusty May. On the other side of the state of Michigan, I don't know what's going on at Michigan State. I don't know what to make of that program here. A.J. Hoggard departs, probably time. That didn't go super well. Madi Sissoko leaves, not great. A couple of mid-major guys, a guy from Omaha and a guy from Longwood, headed to Michigan State, and that's it. Michigan State would be that classic team this year that I think you look at and think, oh man, internal development. These guys are becoming sophomores from a really good freshman class. Booker, Fears, Cohen Carr. What can they do? I don't know if that's going to be Michigan State or not. This is a team that Izzo would typically do well with. I think we'll see how much he has left in the tank because on the surface, it's not a great team, but there's real potential for internal growth. And we're going to see what Michigan State does. No team got hit harder by the portal in the Big Ten than Minnesota did. Ben Johnson had a really good season last year. Minnesota didn't make the NCAA tournament, but boy, did it compete. It gave Purdue a scare in Mackey Arena. It gave Illinois a scare, if I'm remembering correctly, in a game that was like 900 to 800. It was a good team, and it was fun to watch. But that team is all gone. Cam Christie hopped in the portal, ended up staying in the NBA draft. Joshua Olajoseph, Pharrell Payne, Elijah Hawkins, Braden Carrington, all are gone. The only player you'll probably remember that's back for Minnesota is Dawson Garcia, which is slightly ironic that the guy who's on his third school is the one who stayed. But I feel for Ben Johnson. I don't know how you're supposed to win at Minnesota. That's obviously a program that probably doesn't have a ton of NIL resources for basketball. It's a program that's tough to win at. Look at the history there. It's a tough job. I don't know what he's supposed to do, though. That is absolutely brutal. They brought in a number of players, mostly mid-majors. I don't know. I feel for Ben Johnson, though, because that is just brutal. At Nebraska, everyone will miss Keisei Tominaga. He graduated. He's gone. But there was a ton of roster turnover there as well. C.J. Wilcher's the big name. He's gone to Texas A&M. They bring in Connor Esigian from Wisconsin, a name most folks will be interested in as a Northeast Indiana guy. You know, it's interesting that Fred Hoiberg has done so well the last couple years relative to Nebraska's expectations. The guy has always brought in a ton of transfers. And I think now that it's the name of the game to some degree, it makes sense that Nebraska has kind of taken off a little bit and hit a bit of a stride. We'll see how much that momentum rides into this year, because Keisei Tominaga was a big part of it, but there are still some good pieces coming back, some good pieces coming in. Can Nebraska make it two NCAA tournaments in a row? We'll see. Northwestern, never going to be a program that does a ton in the transfer portal. The academic requirements and restrictions there make it nearly impossible. Not going to be a lot of portal activity there, but Boo Booey's gone. Ryan Langborg, how can I still not say that name? Ryan Langborg is gone. There's some all right pieces back there. Matt Nicholson, Ty Berry coming off an injury. Brooks Barnheiser's back. It's a tough place. Northwestern's going to be that type of program where you have to reload periodically and make those runs when you have a guy like Boo Booey to lead you. It's a really tough spot to win at. Chris Collins has done a really good job. I don't know if I expect huge things from Northwestern this year, but I don't think Northwestern is just going to have the bottom fall out. At Ohio State, new era with Jake Diebler taking over full-time and a pretty highly regarded transfer portal class coming in. They did lose some pieces. Zed Key, already mentioned Roddy Gale, Scotty Middleton, Felix Akpara. It's going to look different, but you get Aaron Bradshaw from Kentucky. Michi Johnson returns to Ohio State. Odd one there. Get a guy from San Diego State. Sean Stewart from Duke. A pretty big-time transfer class for Ohio State. This is a group that, you know, if the Buckeyes made the right hire and Diebler's legit, and given that he's a Valparaiso guy, I kind of hope he is, it could be a pretty good Ohio State team. This could be a nice jump, almost a little reminiscent of Chris Holtman's first team at Ohio State with Keita Bates-Diop. At least I think that was Holtman's first team. It sounds right. That's something I'm fascinated to follow, because Ohio State could be pretty good this year, a little bit out of nowhere after a few really down years. Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon. Dana Altman, a very good coach, very highly regarded. The only thing I can really tell you here is that during Oregon's little NCAA tournament run, where they lost in overtime to Creighton in the second round, Jermaine Couisnard and N'Faly Dante led the way, like in an unbelievable way. Those two led the way. Couisnard's gone. He's out of eligibility. He was a seventh-year guy last year. East Chicago product. Folks from the northern part of the state may remember him. N'Faly Dante lost an appeal to the NCAA for an extra year of eligibility. So those two are gone. TJ Bamba from Villanova, Raheem Moss from Toledo, a couple of sizable names that are coming in there, but it's going to look pretty new. I don't know the roster in and out well enough to talk internal improvement or things, but from a very limited knowledge outsider perspective, it could be a bit of a rebuilding year for Oregon. With Penn State, it was a pretty big win to get Ace Baldwin and Puff Johnson back. There were some transfers out. Kanye Clary was kind of a weird situation, as you may remember. He was dismissed from the team, maybe, mid-year. Left the team. I don't remember what all went on, but he's gone. Our old friend Jameel Brown is gone. He's at Temple now. Look, another tough job. I don't know what Penn State's ceiling is in basketball. Did it hit it under Micah Shrewsbury? Probably. We'll see what the roster looks like. I don't know that the transfers in are, mind-blowing or anything, but Mike Rhodes is a good coach. We'll see what he can do this year. I'm going to hit Purdue last. So, over at Rutgers, a pretty interesting situation. As you may know, Rutgers has two of the top recruits in the country coming in next year, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, younger brother of Ron Harper Jr. It lost a ton outside of those guys, though. Mawat Mag, Derek Simpson, Gavin Griffiths, Cliff Amori, all those guys are out. Noah Fernandez, Andre Hyatt, Oscar Palmquist, those guys graduated. It's about to look brand new. 4 mid-major recruits come in to fill the roster a little bit, but that seems to me, and I've been wrong before, like it's going to be those 2 freshmen really running the show out in Piscataway. I'm skeptical, but we'll see how that works. Out in Westwood at UCLA, Mick Cronin went with a very international heavy roster last year, and it clearly didn't work. UCLA was terrible last year. So it really flipped the roster. It has a whole new group. Sky Clark is back in the Big Ten. He went from Illinois to Louisville, now to UCLA. It added 6 or 7 transfers here to try to get this roster competitive in year 1 in the Big Ten. And admittedly, I don't know a ton about some of these guys, but if you look at these top 25 rankings, UCLA is in a lot of them. I've seen a lot of folks having UCLA as a top 4 team in the Big Ten. I don't know enough about these players to really tell you if I agree or not, but it's notable that it's that highly regarded. That's about all I can really say. We'll see what transpires, but it's interesting to me that that's where we're at. On the other side of Los Angeles, USC seems like it's primed for a big reboot. It got rid of Andy Enfield, didn't fire him, but got the outcome USC wanted. 3 guys go to the NBA. 2 of them are good. The other's LeBron James's kid. Isaiah Collier and Boogie Ellis are good players left for the NBA. Bronny James is, the most talked about guy in the draft for obvious reasons. USC won't miss him, but nonetheless, another departure. Musselman comes in. He's flipping that thing. It's going to look entirely different. He's a guy who's has experience doing this in the portal and really rebuilding from that. We'll see what it looks like. I don't know if year 1's going to be great for UCLA or for USC, but I wouldn't count out Eric Musselman in the long term by any means. He's a pretty good coach. Up at Washington, Danny Sprinkle, who the last time he was on a sideline was getting blown out by Purdue in the round of 32. He's got a brand new squad. And the more I do this episode out loud, the more I realize just how drastically different the Big Ten is going to look this year. A ton of guys graduated. They had a lot of grad transfers last year for a team that wasn't very good. The big one that they added was Great Asabar, the stud from Utah State who Washington allegedly paid $2 million to. They had some other ones. DJ Davis from Butler, for my fellow Indianapolis locals, maybe a name you remember. But, yeah, we'll see what it looks like in year 1. It's a lot of transfers. It's a big jump in competition for Washington. Expectations aren't too high, but I think Danny Sprinkle could do a pretty good job there in the long run. Wisconsin, another one, closing this out, that got hammered by the transfer portal here. Chucky Hepburn was a huge loss because Wisconsin expected to keep him. AJ Storr goes to Kansas. That one seemed like it was a bit of an inevitability that he would go chasing some cash or a new opportunity. But Chucky Hepburn was not one that was expected to leave. He goes to Louisville. So that's a big one. That's a big loss. With 3 transfers in, none of which are big names, I don't know that Wisconsin's going to be getting back to the NCAA tournament this year. And I'm curious what Greg Gard's situation looks like there. How in are Wisconsin fans on Greg Gard? I think we're going to find out a little bit this year. As I said, some very big flips in the Big Ten, some very big roster transitions. I do not know how anyone in good faith can sit here and prognosticate the league. If you're a writer going to Big Ten Media Day and you have to rank these teams 1 through 18, I don't even know where you start. I have no idea. There's no telling how this is going to go because there are so few teams that are remotely known. Purdue is the one team in the league that didn't take a transfer. And per Evan Miyakawa, one of the best in the business, there were 34 schools in Division I that did not take an incoming transfer in this year's cycle. Purdue is the only one at the Power 5 level, if I read that correctly, that did not take in a transfer this year. One thing to make abundantly clear, this is not a Clemson football situation. For those who follow college football fairly nationally, it's a bit of a joke that Dabo Swinney and Clemson refuse to take transfers. That is not what's going on at Purdue. Purdue is willing to take transfers. You've seen some very good ones come in. Purdue maybe doesn't make the Final Four last year if it doesn't take Lance Jones. Purdue's had plenty of others. David Jenkins, Evan Boudreau, Jihad Proctor, Spike Albrecht, John Octius, Eric Peck. Plenty of them. Purdue's not against taking transfers, but Purdue's not going to build its roster like that. We will see what the best approach is in the long term. I don't know if Purdue's going to sit out every portal cycle. In fact, I feel pretty confident saying Purdue will not sit out every portal cycle. But will it be something that Purdue looks at with some regret that it didn't get more active in the transfer portal this year or in other years where it maybe doesn't get active in the transfer portal? I don't know. Time will tell on that. It's going to be a really interesting thing to monitor, though, because this is the sport. This is where the sport's going, and teams are picking their lanes that they're going to race in. We'll ultimately see what works out best. But Purdue is doing things very differently than some of the league, and at least slightly different from almost all of the league. And that makes for a really interesting situation. I wanted to close out with a couple of thoughts here as summer practice begins on Cardinal Court and in Mackey Arena for Purdue this year. This is a big summer for Purdue because it has to figure out how to live post Zach Edey. Now, you talk to some folks and they'll think Purdue is done without Zach Edey. I don't think that's realistic, but I also don't think the folks that expect Purdue to just not miss a beat are being reasonable either. The truth is in the middle. Purdue will absolutely miss Zach Edey. There may be some growing pains adjusting to life without Zach Edey, but this is still a pretty good team. The center position is fascinating to me. As I discussed last week on the show, Trey Kaufman-Renn is going to get some minutes at the 5 this year. I'd be shocked if he didn't. Either Daniel Jacobson or Will Berg has to play decent minutes. One of them has to get good minutes. I don't know if there are enough minutes for both of them to play significant roles. That puts kind of a one-on-one onus to this. Who wins that battle? How does that go? Very interested to see that. Jacobson has had a really good summer. Berg has battled with Zach Edey for 2 years, but Berg hasn't played a significant minute of basketball in a few years now. That's a big one to watch. Very curious to see how that goes. In the backcourt, we know what Purdue has in Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. It has a very solid duo there, and if Miles Colvin can make a jump, you have a really good tandem, trio, however you want to call it. Very good trio there. What more can the freshmen provide Purdue? Jakari Harris, CJ Cox, and I guess maybe Jack Benter. A lot of folks are thinking Benter will redshirt. I don't want to jump to conclusions. It seems very possible, but ultimately, we got a long way to go there. Those guys are going to play. Harris, Cox, I think both those guys are probably going to play for you. How ready are they to take on big roles? The way I would look at Purdue's starting lineup right now would be Smith, Lawyer, Colvin, Heidi, Kaufman, Wren. With a big guy coming off the bench, with Caleb First in that mix. Can Raleigh Burgess leap into that mix? I don't know. And you can do some interchangeable stuff at that 3, 4, even 5, where you're moving pieces around quite a bit. But in that backcourt, someone's got to play behind Braden Smith. Someone's got to play behind Fletcher Lawyer. While that may not be a massive role, because those two are going to play for you a lot, what does that look like? That's going to be interesting to see. Those are the two areas. That 5 spot and that 1-2 backup spot are real position battles for Purdue here that are going to be fascinating to watch. Look, it's not like you're going to get a ton of intel out of summer practices. It's not like you're going to get some tip about how Purdue's going to do things. Purdue's going to look different. Purdue is not, I don't want to speak in absolutes here. I'd be surprised if Purdue was, a top 5 team again this year. But I think Purdue can be a really good team. There may be some growing pains. It may look a little more like the 2018-19 team that started 6-5 and ended up in the Elite 8. While I don't know that it'll be that drastic, it wouldn't shock me if Purdue got off to a little slower start as it adjusts to life without Zach Edey. We're a long way from there, a long way to go. Purdue has started anything but slow the last 3 seasons, so we'll see. But there's a lot of stuff to monitor here, and with summer practice getting started, season's still a long way out, but the team's starting to get ready for what should be another good season. That's all I've got for today. Thank you for spending your time with me. I appreciate you guys more than you know. As always, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss an episode. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter @BoilersBeyond. Send me over questions or ideas for shows there or over email at boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. I'll talk to you guys next week. Until then, take care. This episode was brought to you by me. Yes, me. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately, talking about them, I'm talking about insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you protect what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-692-7463 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com, and let's protect you from life's everyday risks.